Hello, and welcome to A Little Room for Healing, where we talk a little about healing, and then we do a little healing, and then we talk a little bit more. My name is Joel, and I am your host. And today, my guest is a fine gentleman named Ezra. Ezra, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Joel. Really excited to be here.
Great. I'm happy to have you. I've been looking forward to this, to talking with you and seeing what we get into.
Oh yeah, me too. Ever since I heard you talk about the idea of the podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then after that, hearing your updates on like the first couple of recording sessions. So I'm really, really happy that I'm finally the one sitting here.
Yay! Yay! Oh, that makes me so happy. Well, let's get into it then. I want to start out with some check-ins and just see where we are right now, what we're feeling in this moment, so that we are just connecting with ourselves a little bit. I'll go first. Let's see. Okay. I'm settling in from some anxiety I had in my chest earlier today. And I still feel it in the distance a little bit. It's not so much on the surface anymore, but it's definitely in the distance. And I am calming from another hectic round of setting the space up. And my usual nerves in the beginning of a podcast are there. So that is where I am in this moment. How about you?
I am actually experiencing a lot of the same things you're experiencing, but for entirely different reasons. For me, I also feel that kind of like settling in kind of quality from anxiety, nervousness, and that nervous quality is, like on the exact other side of excitement. So everything that you said, I am feeling too. However, for me, it feels like that settling in has to do with, let me start over. Oh, words, putting words to emotion, so tricky and fun and interesting. Okay. Simpler. I am noticing how I'm in this weird limbo state because I'm really comfortable with you. And every time we chat, we get into really rich, juicy conversations. And it feels very comfortable to be vulnerable with you in that. I feel like you know me in a way that not a lot of people know me. At the same time, I am aware that this will go out to the wider public. And then I'm really, really excited to be able to be vulnerable and to like show myself in that public way. It touches on the performer that lives inside me. At the same time, this is my first time doing it in such a setting with a podcast. So, like I'm curious, but then I'm also like thinking how best to be understood. So that touches like the teacher inside of me that really wants to communicate clearly. So it's this whole interesting mess, and it's slowly settling into the precise soup/salad that is going to be for this conversation.
Right. I can actually, are you open for a reflection on that?
Yeah.
I can actually hear it settling from the first time you open your mouth to where we are now. I can actually hear it like going.
Cool.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's like I can feel it bring online older parts of me, like when I had a dance career or performing career, or even before that, like leading worship in church. Yeah, it's that part of me that is comfortable walking the line between being me and being not me, or being a version of me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's interesting to kind of feel that muscle being exerted.
What are you hoping to be right now on this podcast?
Such a good question. I am... Okay, it's gonna be... I don't know if I can satisfyingly put it into words, but the feeling is pretty clear in my system. So I'm gonna say it out and you can tell me how it sounds. I'm hoping to be... I'm hoping to dance as if nobody's watching, given the fact that I know that people are watching. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I had this experience is coming up for me. There was a moment in my life where I actually filmed me I was filming me. You may hear someone walking above. I just want to name that, and they might happen throughout the podcast. We're in a floor below another floor, and the ceilings are a little loud. So there was an experience I had where I actually I was being filmed on plant medicine. And when the medicine when I dropped into the experience, the first 15 minutes of the experience, I had to process the fact that there was a camera on me, and it was tight, it was uncomfortable, and I had to really be with the fact I'm here to do actual real work on myself, and I know that people are watching, the camera is watching, and as I processed it, the culmination of the processing was actually me. I got on my knees and I faced the camera and I opened up my arms and my chest and I was like, here I am and I give you permission. And then I was able to go move away and forget that the camera was there.
Oh, wow. That's really awesome. That's really beautiful. That brings up a lot for me, even you just sharing that. Because one, I also know the instance of filming that you're referencing. Yeah, but I've never actually thought about it before. But yeah, it's when I used to have a career in dance, and the more professional, the more my career developed and became, climbed the ranks of, professionalism. As I got more professional, the stage fright actually intensified. You would think I would get more comfortable with it, right? But it actually had the opposite effect. And yeah, it's totally reminding me of that moment before I actually step on stage, when I'm backstage. In the dressing room, I'm fine. Right? In the rehearsal, I'm fine. Then it's just that moment right when I'm in the wings, preparing to take the step onto the stage. And then the first couple of moments when I actually feel eyes on me. Yeah, and kind of like what you said, then there has to be this almost decision, right? I am giving you permission to witness me. Yeah. Yeah, and then it's I don't know, it's so interesting. It's as if my mind knows I'm about to be watched, but something in my body didn't get the memo. And there's no way to actually right send the memo to it until the act actually happens.
Interesting. I wonder why that is. Where are you actually able to inform the body and prepare the body before that moment when you're actually in front of people, or is it really just a thing that has to happen in the moment when you're literally standing up there and being like, oh my God, I have to allow these people, I have to give my body has to give these people permission to witness it?
Yeah, that's what was going on in my mind the moment I started. It was the exact same question you were having too. And I don't know. I am inclined to say there isn't actually a way to prepare it. What it makes me think of is actually kind of sending a kid to a first day of school. It's you can talk it through. You can talk the kid through, right? You can say hey, this is about to happen. you know, like you might feel this, you might feel this, you might feel this, and I'm like totally here for you, whatever. But it's never going to make it completely comfortable, right? Until the act actually happens. Yeah, and in fact, I don't,
true.
right? Like, I don't think we should want to prepare it to a point where, you know, that first moment doesn't actually matter anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, because well, my mind is going into stuff I know from like the somatic coaching world, or even like the yoga world, right? There's like top-down processing and bottom-up processing. So like no matter how we prepare our bodies, it's still gonna be top-down processing. Yeah, but like the it doesn't fully register because the instinct in the body is not actually being triggered, and you can't trigger that with your mind. Yeah, it only gets triggered upon experience.
And when you say top down and bottom up, you mean like head first processing into the body and body processing into the head?
Yeah, in some manner of speaking. I mean, you know, like I tend to get a little pedantic sometimes. So in a way, top down processing and bottom up processing is how it feels like, but scientifically speaking, it's all in your brain. Right? It's like, is it like prefrontal cortex to cerebellum, you know, mammalian brain to reptilian brain processing, or is it reptilian brain to mammalian brain processing? Yeah, kind of all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so you know, front to back or back to front in that kind of way of looking at it. But yeah,
I want to now check in again on where you are with what version you're bringing. Are you feeling more relaxed and at ease? Are you feeling more? Has your body gone through the process of saying, okay, I'm allowing you to witness me?
it has. And another thing that's happening as you started asking a question and I brought in the neuroscience stuff, yeah, like it's almost like the performer side of me settled in. Then the teacher side of me got poked a little bit and started, you know, rising up. Yeah. So then it started competing with the performer for the soapbox.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's where I was like starting to run away a little bit with the, you know, let's talk about the neuroscience stuff. Yeah.
I'm curious about what this part of you has to say. The part of you that is, I'm sitting in my room. I'm sitting in a basement, talking to my friend Joel, and that's all part. What is that part? How's that part feeling?
That part is busy managing the other two parts. Yeah.
How so?
Well, that part usually feels really settled and resourced. So that's actually the part that I use the most to, you know, try to go like, okay, I get that you're excited that, you know, it's in front of a podcast and whatever, but also come back here. Yeah, so it's busy running around and grabbing these other thought trains and energies that are popping up in me and trying to like bring it together. It's the reconciliator kind of, yeah.
Busy. He's a busy guy.
Oh, so busy.
He's a busy guy.
So busy. And you know, it's funny. It's like what I'm tracing it back to. The other day, one of Brianna and my old colleagues, we all dance in a company together.
Brianna is
Brianna is my roommate. Yeah, Brianna is my roommate who I knew from a company I danced for a couple of years back. So one of our coworkers who now lives in LA came to visit. So we were watching old dance videos. One of the videos had this little like interview on like what dance means to you, and then we went across like each company member. And even back then I was talking about authenticity.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I was talking about how dance to me is the most authentic language. It's like the thing that you can't like hide, no matter how much you like train and practice and rehearse it. Whether or not you're actually comfortable just like shows in your body, which is what I liked about it. It's like the most visceral language. And then I started thinking about it. I was just like, geez, this was like way before, you know, any of my healing journey and opening up to spirituality and whatever. And even then I was obsessed with this concept. I'm like, why? What's going on there? And it traces all the way back, I think, to, you know, like growing up religious. It's like this idea that who you are is not enough just by nature. So you're always having to try to, you know, be this person or be that person, or like not even be somebody else, right? But you always have to like do your best. So even if you're being yourself, you're being the best version of yourself. You're not just being yourself. Yeah, so I'm like seeing how that instinct got ingrained so early on that even now I'm like busy running around like trying to like manage these other parts of me that have, you know, like these other personas that have been built, right? Like here's my best version of myself when I'm on stage. Here's my best version of myself when I'm teaching. Here's my best version of myself when I'm sitting in a basement talking to my friend. And myself is trying to be the talent manager. Right. Yeah. Like just juggling all the talents here. Yeah.
When you talk about that aspect of growing up in a religious household or environment, or what's the word I'm looking for? Community. The other thing about the experience of hearing and being taught that you're not really enough by yourself. You're also taught that you need to look outside of yourself for the thing that's going to save you.
Right. There is an externalization, right? And I think I also want to be clear. I don't know, like I'm feeling a lot of sadness even when I think about this, because at the same time it doesn't feel right to say that, oh, you know, like this is why religion is horrible, everything that they teach is wrong. Because at the same time, after all of these years and like working through that, I've come back to understanding what it means, and it's actually, it can be so beautiful, right? It's like, yeah, we are going to be imperfect. That is our nature. We are broken. And yes, it is this larger mystery of the world that always uses our imperfections, no matter how they may be, to help us bring light to the world, to, you know, find meaning, find fulfillment. And we don't need to be perfect. And then you can call that weird, mysterious way the world works, right? Like if you call that God, and then it is by God's grace that we find our place, regardless of how imperfect we are, right? There is that way of looking at it that feels so comforting and grounding and relieving, you know? And it's just sad that for many of us, that's not what we internalize. You know, what we hear instead is, oh yeah, you know, like, for all the wages of sin is death, and you are sinful by nature, and only by accepting Christ, you know, can you be absolved of this sin. But then also, that doesn't mean you're never going to sin again, so you have to absolve yourself again, and you have to like accept Christ again, you know. And that just makes me think of my friend who I was talking to a couple of days ago, and we were kind of talking about this topic, and he suddenly was saying like he had such a memory of being a 6-year-old kid and just praying, just like, okay, I accept Jesus into my heart. And then he paused and he said like, what if I didn't accept him fully? Let me do it again. I accept Jesus in my heart. And he was like, crap, but how do I know if I've really accepted him? You know, like how do I know that I've accepted him enough? So then he would like repeat that prayer over and over and over again, but it never felt more satisfying than after he ran into his mom's room, burst into tears, and go like, Mom, how do I know if I've accepted Jesus? how do I know if he's really in my heart? Mm-hmm. And the worst part was his mom said, oh, I don't know. And you think about like this, what that does to this poor 6-year-old, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, damn, even my mom doesn't know if I've accepted Christ enough. And then it just creates this like never-ending, never satisfied feeling of, you know, like, am I gonna be okay? Am I going to hell? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you're just like reaching endlessly outside of yourself. And when is it enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta say, you touched on a lot of stuff that brings up a lot of stuff in me as you were speaking. But I love that you said what you said. I have a hard time with the idea of sin. Mm. It really brings up a lot of stuff in me regarding my own upbringing. And I like to replace the word sin with trauma. Mm-hmm. We are traumatized. We are by nature traumatized. We actually don't come in traumatized. Well, I mean, some of us might. Depends on what happens when we're in the womb, and what actually we do come in traumatized because we're carrying generational trauma is being passed down. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I like to replace it with trauma and not sin. It just helps me in work through it more.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and that framing has definitely played a key part in helping me work through a lot of my, you know, tension with identity, I guess. You know, yeah, like what does it mean to be broken? Like, what does it mean to be human? What is human nature? Like, if you're taking that framework of like good versus evil, you know, healed versus unhealed, whole versus broken, you know, like even in trauma, you know, like traumatized and untraumatized, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's like using the frame of trauma definitely feels at least a little bit more compassionate.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Although now I'm connecting something with sin. Well, the story of sin happened with apparently the first humans, mm-hmm. first two humans. And then that sin gets passed down. Mm-hmm. So a trauma happened with the first humans, and that is just inherently passed down generation after generation after generation.
Yeah. Oh, this is getting into really fun territory. Here's the really, really interesting part that kind of unpacked in my mind, you know, as I do thought experiments about like religion and original sin or original trauma. That original sin wasn't actually that they did anything wrong per se, right? Like the original sin is, I don't know, like depends on who you ask, right? It's either that they defied God and ate of the fruit, or the fruit itself, right, is the knowledge of good and evil that is the sinfulness, right? So if I go with that second idea, the idea itself that you did something wrong, that is the original trauma. Right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, right?
Oh, God.
Because traumatizing events do not inherently cause trauma, right? Like my cats beat each other up all the time. Like if I were them, I would be traumatized, but for them it's just fun. Yeah, because they don't think that is, oh my God, this is such a wrong thing. You know, they don't feel the shame that comes with this is wrong. Like it just is, right? Mm-hmm. So it's almost like our knowledge, our insistence on demarcating between what is good and what is evil, is what makes us avoid certain things and attach too much to certain things. Like, this is good, I want more of it. Well, that's evil, I'm going to try my best to never do it. And then we get in our own way, and then we start building all of the shame, and then that's what we pass down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, fun little thought.
That is a really fun little thought that just went in my head.
What?
Specifically, the trauma was, or the sin wasn't that the apple was eaten, and it wasn't that there was a defiance happening. It was that we were shamed. They were shamed afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
They were shamed afterwards that they ate the fruit and told you did wrong. And now you're constantly looked at as having to try and do the right thing, but I'm judging you that you're doing it wrong.
Mm.
So there's this sense that we are under this microscope of judgment. And if that's the way that someone's approaching us, how are we going to do it right?
Yeah, totally. I have this desire to poke at that. I mean, well, not poke, I guess, like to add on just a little bit more.
Please.
Yeah?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay, because I agree with you, but for me, it's a little bit, I want to go a little bit further. It's not that the other person is judging us or shaming us. Because if you think about God, right, going like, oh no, why have you eaten of this fruit? I told you not to do it. That doesn't necessarily imply shame or judgment, right? He's just saying, why did you do this thing that I told you not to do? But Adam and Eve, because they ate of this fruit, now has this idea of good and evil in their mind. Right? They feel judged when all God was doing was asking a simple question. Right? And they go like, oh crap, God told me not to do it and I did it. How could I have done it? And the other one's judging and shaming themselves. Yeah. So it's that like attachment, that knowledge in there.
Yeah.
And that's what creates trauma in us, which I don't know, I personally find really cool.
So we are moving into your session. I'd love to take a little time before with that session to tune into you. And you can think about what intention you want to put to place, to name for this session.
Well, I don't know if I have a clear intention right top of mind. But I will say that one, there was clearly a lot more charge around that whole topic of just being oneself than I expected. So something around that.
Okay. An intention around the charge of being oneself.
Yeah, I don't know. What are you picking up on? Or what's coming through you at the moment?
What's coming through me is that I'm more aware of where you are in your day-to-day life than we talked about today on the podcast.
Ah, interesting.
So I am hearing the charge about being oneself and also feeling the undercurrent of what we actually talked about on a personal level earlier this week.
Gotcha.
I know that sounds vague for those listening. I apologize.
You know, I have a feeling those two threads might be connected. In fact, I'm pretty sure they are. So, yeah. Okay, so how about this? Never mind. I don't think I can put it into words.
Okay. Well, how about this? We have the intention about the charge,
Okay.
and we do the session, and then we talk about what comes up afterwards and see where it goes from there.
Yeah. I guess like I couldn't put it into words in terms of like what the energies were. But I guess in my mind, it's like there is the like tracing the charge you were feeling in what I was talking about just in this podcast. And then another thread from the more personal stuff that we talked about earlier this week. And I'll be curious if through Lahochi, I don't know if this was something that Lahochi can do, right? But like walking down those two paths and seeing where they converge.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the intention.
That's the intention.
Great. Okay. Are you ready then for the session?
I am.
Then we will be back after Ezra's Lahochi session. And we are back from Ezra's session. I think that I would like to just hear from you to bring us back into the space of what, if anything, came up for you.
Well, one, that was really weird and intense. And even now, I still feel like, during the come up phase of MDMA or mushrooms, yeah, but not the full dose. Like, if you take a little microdose of MDMA during the come up part, and everything feels slightly weird.
Right.
Right. And it's like you can still you're still having your own thoughts and emotions, but like you're having just the weirdest little difficulty making sense of it. Yeah, that's still how I'm feeling right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A lot of bodily functions. Yeah, a lot of tummy gurgling. A lot of coughing. Yeah, felt like something was stuck in my left side of my diaphragm. Or like, yeah, sort of in this constricted feeling in my lungs that kept wanting to come out. Yeah, it felt like, yeah, like I needed to get something out of my throat. Those were the highlights. Here's the thoughts that are bubbling up for me.
Yes.
Well, it's a synthesis of everything that has happened through this session. Gonna try my best to messily synthesize what I can.
Great.
Yeah, but I feel excited to try because it feels like the summary feels like it's right there.
Okay.
Yeah. So whether I get it or not, it's another matter. But I want to try. Okay. So the word that kept coming up during the Lahochi session was self-consciousness. And it also makes me think of everything we were talking about earlier with religion and sin and the fact that, by nature, you are not okay, right? So the idea of self-consciousness being that you have to always be conscious of self because self is not okay. So you have to watch it constantly. And I think what that does for me is that even when I'm trying to be authentic or trying to be myself, it feels like I'm piloting myself from the outside. Yeah, it's like, here is what I have observed myself to be that is A, acceptable, or B, if it's not acceptable, it is not acceptable in ways that I can accept. And then you put together this persona that is as close to who I am as I can. And then I do my very, very best to mimic myself. And that's what it feels like self-consciousness does.
Yeah. And I'm trying to feel into the act of mimicking the template that you set. And to me, that sounds like for me, it would bring up anxiety and a wanting to get it right and a distraction from being fully with what is.
Yeah. And where it gets super twisted is if you decide that who I am is somebody that likes to be present. Then you get into really weird meta stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you're like, okay, so being present means this. And then you mimic being present as best as you can. And then you're more busy mimicking than being present. But what you're mimicking has all of the correct markers of being present. So then you don't even know why it doesn't feel quite right.
Is this something that, regarding this being present thing, is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah. I think I'm still experiencing various levels of it all the time. And the only time when I'm not and I drop my guard completely is when I am with people who I feel so comfortable with, or I enter spaces that almost coerce you into being vulnerable. Right? Almost like the shame mechanism. It's almost like it uses the shame mechanism the other way around against me, right? Like, yeah, it's like if you feel so not okay in mimicking yourself, that the only way to protect yourself is to just be yourself. Right?
Wow.
And
yeah.
there are certain spaces that kind of do that. Yeah, it invites that radical vulnerability. So those are kind of the two scenarios.
If there's some anxiety that comes up with mimicking yourself in that situation, what is the feeling in the body that happens when the only way to, did you say protect yourself, was to actually be like truly present?
I think the initial reaction is confusion. It's very confusing. Like okay, here's the thought that comes to mind. You know, it's like, imagine if like a guy who really doesn't like feeling his feelings. You know, he's that kind of guy who's just like, I'm a tough guy. And then if somebody tells him like, what, you're not man enough to feel your feelings? And then he goes, how dare you say that? I'm not afraid to feel my feelings. I'm going to feel my feelings. And then like, you know, but at first there's like this glitchy, like really confusing kind of thing. Like, I'm going to be so tough that I feel my feelings. And then suddenly you're feeling your feelings and you're not tough. But then because you did that, you feel really happy and tough about the fact that you managed to do it. And then everything just kind of, I don't know, weirdly circles in on itself. Yeah, until finally it just kind of like lets go. And then it's, oh my God.
Whoa.
This feels so nice.
Wow, that was interesting. Even you landing on there's a go, like some interesting burst happened right here in my system that I had this tingle go down my arm. Yeah. Like I can feel like it gets wound up, and then it just like...
That's exactly what it feels like. Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine it would be like, I don't know, like in a way, it's like the way I've experienced it tangibly in my life. It's like you pretend to be yourself, and then you pretend to be yourself some more, and then sometimes you manage to successfully be yourself, and then it makes you so excited and so pleased with how you're being yourself that you try harder to be yourself. And then but because you're trying harder to be yourself, then you're not being yourself, and then you're getting frustrated. So then you know, and it's like there's this weird way it just keeps circling on itself until finally you almost like on accident manage to mimic yourself exactly perfectly. And then in that moment you're not mimicking, and then it's like, oh, that's it.
Are you then aware of the moment that you switch back into trying to be yourself?
Sometimes. I'm getting better at it. Yeah. I think the process is whenever I manage to accidentally land on it, I try my best to notice when I start to drift. And at first it's like maybe a month later, then I realize that I'm actually back in the mimicry.
Oh.
And then the next time it's hopefully 2 weeks that I notice the drift. Yeah.
So the drift actually happens over time? It's not just like a moment where it's like, and I'm out.
Sometimes it is, but the abrupt ones are easier to catch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the abrupt one happens because somebody walks into the room and they're exactly the kind of person that I really feel a need to prove myself to. And then that switch is so sudden.
Oh my God. You know what is popping up in me? As you're talking about this, I'm going through the process in my own system of, wait, am I myself right now, or am I acting like myself? And then it reminded me of the process of going through what we talked about in the very beginning of this podcast of there are people listening, it's being filmed, and we have to adjust, and the body has to go, okay, you're welcome in, and I can be myself in front of you. And it's like a little microcosm of what you're speaking about, like someone coming in a room and you want to do that, like people are in the room and now we're like, wait, I'm very conscious that that's there. I'm conscious that the mics are here. I'm conscious that there's time happening. There's a time container to this. And then I'm like, am I fully present with Ezra or not? And sometimes I feel myself drift, and sometimes I come back, and then I'm like drifting. I'm like, then I'm going to come back. I'm like over adjusting to be myself and present again with you.
Yeah, exhausting, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what I'm working through. Every single moment of my life, all the time, because it's such an instinct that's ingrained from like God is watching all the time. There's always an audience, right? And having left church or having broken away from that framework, then it's your higher self is watching you all of the time. Or even if you don't go higher self, it's like, the observer ego, whatever you want to call it, the part that witnesses yourself and, has opinions about whether it likes who you are or doesn't like who you are, or thinks that there are some things that you could improve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like coming back to a way of healthily relating to it, that it feels like a partner rather than an audience in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you come back to it being a partner, what in it makes it how is it that it ends up being a partner? Can you explain like the partner aspect of it?
I think at its best, that part that watches the self, even if it says, oh, damn, I wonder why I acted that way. That didn't feel really nice. I don't really like that. I wonder how we can work on it. You know, and like there's this, we're in it together and it's kind, and it feels therefore like a trustworthy witness, you know, of like knowing that you can act anywhere, any way that you want, and you're never going to be too far off course because there's this person who's always, you know, keeping you on track out of love, right? Because he desires the best for you. Right? And yeah, when at its best, you don't need another person in your life to do that because you're doing that for yourself.
That is the healthy observer in you, as opposed to the one that we talked about earlier. That's the one that shames you.
Right. The one that goes like, oh man, I wonder why I did that. That wasn't very nice. And did you see how the other person responded? They were like fucking weirded out by you.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh, I like the healthy one. The healthy one feels so much better. Like even just like, and now it's like devil angel on his shoulder, and the angel just being like, okay, you did that. That's okay. What can we do, or what is it that caused that, and can we look at that and be with it in a loving way to maybe not do it again next time?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you know, it's so funny that you said angel and devil on the shoulder. The funny part is that, you know, because of the flavor of Christianity that I internalized, it's almost flipped. It's like the angel's the bad one. Right? The angel's one sitting on the shoulder and just like, that wasn't very nice. Why would you do that? No, like, we gotta work on that. That needs to be better. And the devil's like, who the fuck cares, man? Like, that felt good, right? So, you know, work on it another time. It's not like you're not working on it all the time. So you get there when you get there. For now, who the fuck cares? Yell if you want to. Curse if you want to.
So that's really like, I have a lot of religious stuff. So like when you go there, like I'm processing my own stuff through that lens that you're talking of, and I'm hearing you and I'm liking it, and I'm seeing how it affects me. Where I'm hearing, this is what I'm hearing when you say that. The angel is the one saying in this church example that you shouldn't behave that way, that behaving that way is wrong, and you need to stop. Just stop doing that. And the devil's like, you listen, this is what came out of you. This is what's in you. And that needed to be moved. And that's cool. There's no need to suppress or push down this feeling, this energy, because that's just going to hurt you and harm you.
Yeah. And I think both sides need to be integrated ultimately. You know, it feels like, sure, like if there is an angel and a devil on the shoulder, right? The devil is the one that sides with us, the small broken man, and the angel is the one that sides with, I don't know, like where we need to get to, right? And if they could just work together, that would be a lot better than picking one.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's very true.
Yeah.
Because I was, even just describing and talking about it, I was feeling like, why does there need to be a polarity here?
You're right.
Why, like, something doesn't feel right about banishing both voices completely. Oh, why can't they work together? Why can't they work together?
Fear is my answer, at least. You know, it's like it's like this. I sort of almost see this pendulum that's always swinging, where either so afraid that if we allow ourselves to do the things that we need to do, and if we allow ourselves to be broken, we will never get better. We will continue to hurt people. We will, whatever it is the consequences are. So we're so afraid of the consequences that we need to, be on the side of God, whatever it is, be on the side of good all the time. And then you need to be like ferocious about it, like full of fervor. Or on the flip side, we become so afraid of the suppression of, I don't know, like autonomy, right? It's like you do that and then it's always what somebody else wants you to do. It's always something some holy book wants you to do. It's always something that society wants you to do. It's always, like it has to be the right way, right? Like there's no room for negative consequences, aka there's no room for us. And then so we become so afraid of the lack of autonomy or the loss of autonomy that we go the other way and just like, autonomy is always what needs to make sense. If I need to do this, I'm gonna fucking do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then at worst, right, there it loses accountability. It loses the ability to say, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do, and I understand that it's going to hurt some people along the way, but I still have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of a ramble. I guess I'm not clear enough with all of it yet in order to say it succinctly.
What do you mean by ramble? Oh, I guess you just said it. You felt like you weren't saying it succinctly.
Yeah, I wish I could like put all of that into 2 nice little sentences.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I personally really like the journey. And having the journey unfold in front of me helps me pick up all of the pieces that are being presented instead of just 2 succinct sentences. Then I have to still take those in and then go back in and unravel them and look at the mess and then put it back together. You know what I'm saying?
It's always like that, huh?
Often like that.
Often like that, yeah.
Yeah, I can't say always. Like sometimes it is really nice to be like, oh, that really lands in those 2 succinct sentences. That's hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm still self-conscious enough to right always be also still I'm constantly aware that there are people who are going to listen to us, and I guess I hope they were along for the whole ride too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a level of concern that there were people falling off the side of the roller coaster as we were doing the loops. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I hear that, and it's possible. And I think that's okay. Because this is the idea that I have behind this experience, this experiment of A Little Room for Healing, is that we're not coming in with the answers, that we are actually in the mess and finding our way through it, because that's how most of the world is. And I really, so there's a desire for people to like watch other people navigate the mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if people are constantly falling off the roller coaster, then we can take that as a real-time example of what happens when we're self-conscious. We keep we keep losing people along our ride.
I'd like to think that also if someone falls off the roller coaster at some point or steps off the ride, that maybe they got what they needed out of it for where they are.
Yeah, that's true too.
I'm wondering if you're open to talking about some of the things we talked about earlier this week.
Yeah. You're feeling a connection there?
Something in me. I mean, I don't have
A clear.
yeah. Like, as you can see, it's even difficult to get into it. But yeah, it feels like that's what wants to happen.
Okay.
I do not know why yet.
Happy to go with that instinct. Cool. I guess before we take that 90-degree angle, or maybe it's not a 90-degree angle, yeah, but maybe before we turn down that road, I just wanted to say that I am now hyper aware of both of us being hyper aware of our awareness of the audience and also each other, and aware of that process going on in the other person.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things to be simultaneously aware of.
It's partly what short-circuited me just then in trying to know where to go next.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I wanted to go to where we're going is I think it's going to land us back in our bodies.
I would. Okay, cool. Great. I am fully with you now. Let's
Yeah.
do it. Was it an open-ended question directed for me?
It is an open-ended question of, is there anything alive from what we talked about earlier this week that you are open to sharing here with me now and those listening / watching?
I am interested in sharing. I am very aware of my instinct to package it into a nice little story that makes sense. Again, because I'm aware of people listening.
Right.
I am also feeling that that's precisely not the way to share it. So I think an additional question would be helpful.
Okay. Something else is coming up too. Wow. The whole awareness thing really shook the room up a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
Another thing that I'm noticing, even in asking that question, is, and one of the reasons why it might not want to come out right now, is that it feels like time is constricted on how deep we can actually get into it. So maybe it's something that doesn't want to come out this particular time.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying though, and I can see why you asked that question in the first place. It feels like everything that we've talked about, right, with like performing and self-consciousness and, you know, religion is like this like top layer. Because then this question is just like, why does any of that like matter, right? Like, how is it actually hurting me in my life, and how is it affecting me in, you know, the way I navigate the world? And that question hasn't been answered at all. Yeah. And it feels like if I could go into some of the things we were talking about earlier this week, that actually makes it real and makes it make sense for why any of those conversations mattered in the first place. Yeah. Okay.
I feel, and this is just a desire I have, or are of bringing the people listening in on what we're talking about and it doesn't mean we have to go into it in depth. And if you feel comfortable just giving a headline of what we talked about earlier this week, if that even feels good, and there's a no as a fine answer, just to get the connection of what we're talking about here and what's going on.
Got it. So the thing I've been struggling with is a sense of worthlessness, but not so much that I feel that I'm worthless, but this knowledge of how by mainstream social standards it feels to me like the world thinks that I'm worthless. Not having the right credentials, not having money, not having a career that makes sense, not having, well, anything. Pick any measure that society likes to measure people by, and I'm pretty low on that scale, no matter what it is. And yeah, it feels like I want to make a connection to what we've been talking about, but it feels like just out of reach, just a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Is there something to do with like the honesty of how horrible that feeling of worthlessness is? Brings up rage and anger and negativity, right? It's like all of the stereotypical, like, why does society only value XYZ things? Why do we need bachelor's degrees? And why do we care that people are rich? Like, what about all these people with like skills and talents that we don't value? And like rage, burn down the machine, whatever it is. But then that, at least for me, also brings up a feeling of powerlessness, because I don't want to burn down society. Mm-hmm. I also don't really think that that's what gets us somewhere. You can't point a sword at people and tell them like, you better value dancers. Or you can't convince people to value stuff that they don't value. Therefore, I don't know. There's like a chunk missing here. And then it jumps through some hoops, and then it makes a couple of interesting little psychological twists and mental gymnastics. And then it arrives at, if I can mimic a version of myself that I'm really, really happy with. Yes. That other people also feel good about. Then I can be both authentic and accepted. And that's gonna keep me safe.
Yeah. That's exactly what my brain did too. Yeah. I was like, that's the end point. But what happens in there? What is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hoops and flips and...
Yeah, and there's something about the start point that's like, it's not okay to just admit that you're a broken mess and you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. Yeah. Like, it's like, it's not okay to just say, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing with my life, and I think that the society doesn't value me, and I have no idea why, and it makes me really fucking angry. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to give up on the things that I enjoy because I really love them and I really value who I am. My gripe is that the world doesn't seem to value it, and I have no idea what the fuck to do about it. Mm-hmm. And just like stop there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like we can step out into the world and say, I'm going to be vulnerable, and I allow you to look at my vulnerability. of being a mess and feeling worthless right now, and the world goes, I don't really care. Get your shit together and get some credentials and get some, like, have these pieces of paper, have these titles, and then you can be with us.
Yeah. Yeah, and going back to your angel devil analogy, is then either if you go with the angel side, then you're like, oh, we're gonna be arts activists. We're going to like champion how much these skills should be valued. We're going to like open up a nonprofit and whatever, right? Like, or you go the devil side, and then it's, you know, like rock a boy. Yeah, I'm going to be unemployed and I'm going to be a hippie and I'm going to like take LSD every day and I'm just going to rage against the machine.
And how can we integrate the two of them?
Right. Yeah, if you just integrate the two of them, right, and just like, right, like not feel compelled to take action to like fix it, and just start with this sucks. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Is that like a tear it down to build it up, or need to start from where you are?
Need to start from where you are. Yeah. It's like before we can even talk about like what we need to tear down and what we need to build up, we need to understand where we're at and what the landscape is. Otherwise, we will keep misidentifying what it is we need to tear down and what it is that we're trying to build up.
That feels like a great ending point to me, if it feels okay to you.
There's still this itch in the back of my head. Like, okay, here's what it is. I would love to listen back to this whole thing with you and map out what the hell it is we talked about clearly. Because the whole thing still feels like soup in my head.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and part of that desire again is wishing that I could summarize this neatly, both for myself and for our listeners, and then end. But I think instead I will settle on, hey, if anyone out there has a nice little map after listening to what the hell it is we've just talked about, feel free to email Joel.
Yes, and I will pass it along to Ezra. I think what you just said, though, of your desire for all that, just summed it up. You, like, this feels like a soup to you of what just came out of us the last hour and whatever minutes. And we almost ended with, just, we have to start with where we are. And right now, it just feels like soup and a mess. And that's where it is. That's where it is. That's where it is.
Yeah, I can live with that.
Great. I assume you'll still accept emails, though?
Oh, yeah.
To me, definitely. That I will pass to you?
Yep. Send Ezra some soup.
One more check-in. Are you feeling complete?
Yeah.
I am feeling complete as well. And completely in the soup. And I would like to invite all of you out there to make a little room for healing in your lives, and maybe find yourself in some soup someday to make sense of. It is a blast. Until next time.